To the extent that we live our lives in a manner that is consistent with the truth in our heart, we thrive.
Welcome to the Meier Clinics podcast, and you just heard a quote from one of your hosts, Dr. Lisa Day. Join our licensed clinical professionals from various backgrounds as they discuss fascinating mental health topics with a wide range of guests. Meier Clinics is a Christian counseling organization with multiple clinics nationwide dedicated to treating the whole person, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Welcome to our listening family. We thank you for joining us. Hello, listeners. Thanks for tuning in. This is Kristen, and I've got Dr. Paul Meier with me. And hi, Paul. First, let's start with that.
Hello, Kristen. It's always nice to be with you.
And we're going to continue on our 24 guidelines for mature marital communications. There's so much information that Paul, I don't know, listeners of the Meier Clinics podcast, if you realize this, but Paul sends me very thought out notes for each show. He really, puts a lot of work into this. So came up with more good info, and we're going to just add to it from here. All right, Paul, go.
Yeah, because the more I looked into it, we actually did one on where we covered some of the guidelines, a month or so ago. But the more I studied it, the more I thought, people are so complex that I really need to get down into the nitty gritty. So it's not just simplistic. And so I added some points or expanded on some. And so we're going to go from one on and do 24 guidelines on mature marital communications. And if you're not married, these would still apply to you and a significant other that you're dating, or even a lot of these would apply to any adult-to-adult relationship. So it's not all just about marriage. But
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's start with number one. Whenever two people meet, see, this is a little deeper concept here. Whenever two people meet, including you and your mate for the first time, there's even including you and your mate after 30 years, whenever two people meet or enter into a relationship, there's actually 6 people present. There's the two people as they see themselves, the two people as they see each other, and the two people as they really are. And only God sees the one of how the person really is.
Right.
And so even now, after many years of marriage, there's still 6 people present. A marital couple will get to know each other a lot better, and learn each other's flaws and everything else. They'll get to learn each other a lot, understand each other a lot better, and share feelings and all that. But still, there's a little bit of difference, at least, between how how each person sees himself is still somewhat wrong, because a lot of things they haven't become aware of yet, and we never become aware of everything in our lifetime. And your view of your mate is still somewhat wrong, because if you saw every single thought that goes on in your mate's head and all that, you might not like it, but if you saw every thought, your mate isn't quite exactly how you see him. And if we saw ourselves as God sees us, we'd all be surprised, and we'd be pleasantly surprised about some things and pretty disappointed and shocked about others. We've got clients that come. We've got a day program called The Catalyst, where, in fact, I just finished seeing 6 people or 7 there this morning before I came to do the podcast. And people come for 7 hours a day of therapy for, just intense digging and probing therapy, Gestalt techniques and all that, for about 7 hours a day, 5 days a week for 3 weeks. And one of the things we do when they first get here is we even do psychological testing on them to see what the computer's guessing. And so when they first get here, a lot of them feel worse at the end of the first week than they did when they got here. Then they heal. Then they start healing, because by looking at the psych testing and by the things that we're becoming aware, almost all of them see a lot of things about themselves and the parents and things that they didn't see before, and they just grieve and cry and weep when they see the things that have been causing their pain. But then as they work on them and make new decisions, then they get healed. So the truth hurts, but it sets you free. So just remember, whenever between you and your mate, if you're married, or your significant other person, if you're in a serious relationship, you don't really see your mate exactly as he or she is, and your mate doesn't see himself as he really truly is, totally, and your mate doesn't see you as you truly are, totally. So you just realize that it's a relationship in progress. And a majority, according to psychiatry research, and I believe it, a majority of everyone's thoughts, feelings, and motives are out of our awareness. So most of our thoughts, feelings, and motives are out of our awareness. Like if you saw an iceberg on a cruise to Alaska or something, then an eighth of it sticks out of the water and 7/8 is underwater. So it looks like it's not that big, but it's huge. And in looking at yourself or looking at your mate, you see the part sticking out of the water, and there's a whole bunch underneath the water that you don't see, and about yourself too. And so as we go through life with the help of God and therapy and a mate, actually that's what one of my psychiatry professors told me that many years ago at Duke, surprisingly, because they didn't like to say anything about religion, but one of them said, there's only three things that really change a man that I know of, and one's therapy, and one's therapy, one's God, and the other one's a good wife that tells them the truth. so the vast majority of our thoughts are out of our awareness. Now that sounds Freudian, because Freud talked about the unconscious and all that. I sometimes refer to him as sigmoid Freud, because I don't agree with everything he said. But King David also said in Psalm 139, he said he asked for God to show him. He said, God, please show me my innermost thoughts so that I can walk in a way that's pleasing to you, so I can mature. So David was aware that he had innermost thoughts that he wasn't aware of, that he needed to become aware of. So the Bible talked about the unconscious 3,000 years before Freud said anything about it. And then in Hebrews 4:22, which we assume was written by the Apostle Paul, he said it's a good idea to meditate on Scripture daily, because it's able to reveal to you your own unconscious thoughts. The Word of God's quick and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword, able to divide asunder the thoughts, feelings, and it's what it's really saying is you'll become aware of things inside yourself that you hadn't seen before. Wise King Solomon 3,000 years ago also said that only by pride comes contention, silly human pride. So because we're prideful, we don't want to look at the things that are inside us that need working on, and we tend to think we're right and the mate's wrong, and so becoming more aware of the truth will help us become more humble, and humility really goes a long way in a marriage. So that's a long point one. Do you have any comments?
I was just thinking we're going to get to point 6 on this show today. Listeners,
we'll just go as far as we can. Some of them are short, some are long. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that, Kristen, or is that?
No, I thought you did it great.
Okay. Number 2 is a little shorter. Commitment to God is important in a marriage. And I know those of you listening have all different kinds of view of God. And there's people listening that don't believe in a God and things like that. But if you look at even the treatments that help people overcome opioid addictions and all that other stuff, the research shows that the 12-step programs are the ones that work the best. And they include committing yourself to God and admitting that you have flaws and asking for his help. And I think it's really true. And I think it applies in marriage too. And because pride is what causes most contention in a marriage, if we commit ourselves to God, it helps us to be more humble. And if you imagine a triangle with God at the top and you and your mate on the bottom corners, the closer you both get to God, the more you slide up that triangle and become closer to each other. So that's all I wanted to say about that.
Agreed. I think
And,
if there's, a common goal to have, what I mean, I remember the minister that married my ex-husband and I had put in something from the prophet, and they're about having something there that unifies you, that's bigger than both of you,
hmm
is a huge piece of a successful marriage, because then it's you tend to mind your behavior a little bit better.
yeah, yeah. And then number 3 is a new one I added. When you get married, you think your mate, depending on how long you dated, but when you get married, most people, we expect our mate to be normal. And I want to remind you that normal is only a setting on your dryer. It's not your washer or dryer have a normal on it, but people don't have a normal spot to turn the knob to. There's no such thing as normal. There's grossly normal and quite normal and grossly abnormal. There are varieties, but the longer a couple is married, the more aware they become of each other's unique abnormalities. And there's, I've got a lot of flaws that my mate never noticed when we got married, and I wasn't trying to hide them, but I wasn't even aware of them myself lots of times. But anyone expecting perfection or even almost total normality in your mate will be gravely disappointed, because nobody's perfect. So why should anyone even try to be perfect? A mate's unique thoughts or actions can either be a gift,
Yep.
or it can be a lesson about living with an imperfect person. So expect to be married to somebody abnormal, and expect to be somewhat abnormal ourselves and not be so shocked.
Absolutely.
Any comments on that?
Well,
You're totally normal, so
yeah,
you're the
no,
only one I know who's totally normal. So
this could fit. This that's a fallacy. That's a vision created in your mind. That's not real. No, I would say with that one, with the normal thing too. Like if you go, what I see happen all the time is people that get married, and it doesn't. If you get married right away, that's fine. There are plenty of marriages that work out, and I'm not the judge and jury on that anyway. But the thing that they go into is this big fantasy of what marriage, it's going to be this most amazing, oh my gosh, and tiptoe through the tulips, and oh, we have a perfect,
yeah,
and the reality is, when you agree to marry another person, that is a spiritual union, not just a legal union. And if you go into it knowing that this is the hardest work that you are ever going to do in your entire life, other than having children, is this marriage. If you can go into it with reality instead of fantasy, the come down that always happens after a few months or maybe the first year will be less traumatic if you go into it with that right out of the gate.
yeah. If tiptoeing through the tulips might be what you do to get out of the room.
Right?
Quietly.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't even put in here that, one thing we learn in psychiatry is the 40 ways that we deceive ourselves. And I'm sure there's more, but we're aware of 40 defense mechanisms, we call it, where how we lie to ourselves and things like that. And we all do it, so like, a person might get mad at their boss today, but they dare not chew the boss out if the boss is mean to them, and they get home and they don't know why, but they're nasty to their mate. And because if you have buried anger, that especially if you're trying to stuff it and not be aware of it, you end up taking it out on whoever you're closest to, and whoever's least likely to reject you. And so you come home and you
Right.
get mad at your mate, and you think it's your mate's fault that you're mad at your mate, and your mate thinks, why is he picking on me, or why is she picking on me? And which is true. The mate may be an innocent victim there, and so a lot of conflicts are, like I said, a lot of them are because of unconscious stuff that's going on that we're not even aware of. And just becoming aware of how little we know about ourselves can help us to be a little more humble and try to analyze it. Sometimes if I'm in a conflict with my mate or any other mature adult that I'm working with or something, sometimes I'll imagine myself stepping outside of my body and calmly looking at the two people. So then instead of just reacting with defensiveness or however I would normally react, I stop and, I scratch my chin and analyze it. Okay, what would be the best way for the two of them to handle it? And then I come back. I don't really leave my body now. Don't worry, I'm not that crazy, but I pretend like I do just to get a different perspective. And I come back and then I can handle it more maturely instead of overreacting. But we just we tend to do that. We tend to expect normality, and there isn't any such thing.
Right, exactly. And you aren't normal.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm not normal. Yeah.
No, well, I didn't you specifically, but I mean, you thinking that, you making a judgment about someone else, your mate's, normalcy is a really good indicator to go, maybe I need to look at my thoughts about my own.
Yeah. And that's another thing. Yeah. Projection. That's another one of the defense mechanisms. If that I didn't even have in on the list that you just made me think of it. If we had a long enough list, it'd be about 1,000 points. But if you have, let's say you have 20 faults, just a random number. If one person has 20 faults and the mate has 20 faults, most of those you can overlook and they won't bother each other very much. But if you have 4 in common, those 4 will drive you nuts because you won't see those in you, but you'll overly see them in your mate. That's projection. And so you'll get really mad at your mate for reminding you of you. And so you'll tend to get maddest at your mate. If you get mad at your mate for being abnormal, it's usually in an area where you're abnormal. Not always, but usually if you stop and be a little humble, you'll think, oh, yeah, that is true. So, okay. Anyway, that's a bonus. As you share things, I think of more, Kristen. So, okay, number 4 is simple. Just agree to listen to each other's feelings.
Right.
And as again, the people I saw in the day program, a lot of them grew up in homes. I had a guy tell me that today. A lot of them grew up in homes where you couldn't express feelings. You didn't walk up to, they had, some of them had like alcoholic, abusive parents and stuff, or mean, critical mom, or and to walk up to their parent and say, "Mommy, I'm mad at you today," when they're 4 years old or 5 years old, or "Daddy, I'm really mad at you today." I mean, they might get clobbered or criticized, rejected, things like that. When my kids would be 4 or 5 and say, "Dad, I'm mad at you right now," I would say, "Well, thanks for letting me know how you feel. Let's sit down and talk about it." And now, if they got disciplined, if one of them got disciplined for hitting his little sister or something like that, and he'd get mad at me for disciplining him, and he'd say, "Dad, I'm really mad at you right now." And I said, "What for?" For punishing me for hitting so and so because she deserved it or something like that. And I'll say, "Well, thanks for letting me know how you feel. Next time you do that, I'm going to discipline you again because that's still not appropriate. But it's important that you share how you feel." And so I did encourage my kids to share their feelings. And as they got older in teens, they could do that freely and not worry about getting rejected. But a lot of people grew up in homes where you didn't learn to do that, or you were taught that not to do that, especially guys, and I think one reason women live longer is because more women are permitted to share feelings growing up than guys are. Big boys don't cry and all that stuff.
Right.
And so, but sharing feelings is very important, and that's more important than arguing about facts.
Agreed.
Hi, this is Dr. Paul Meier of the Meier Clinics. Our Christian counselors across the country have a goal of helping all those who come to us to become what God has called them to be. If you're in a situation where you're not at peace within yourself, or you just feel like there's joy that's missing in your life, we can come alongside to help you obtain peace and joy.
This message is sponsored by the Meier Clinic Foundation, a nonprofit Christian counseling ministry. The number is 1-888-7-CLINIC, 1-888-7-CLINIC.
Agreed. And I'd say what a gift you give your kids in their future relationship if they see, how your marriage really is, not I had a friend that got in trouble, and this was in high school, and her parents, said, "Well, we have never argued in front of our children." And they were so proud of that. And I was like, and
Yeah.
I, even as a teenager, thought, well, that's why your daughter is so messed up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, that's a really good point that we should add to our list of 106 now. That's a really, really good point, Kristen. That it's really good.
112. Yeah, 112.
Yeah, you know what? This will sound crazy to some people listening to us, but it's really good to argue in front of your kids.
Yeah.
And they say, what? You know, some people are saying, what are you talking about right now? And but if you go by these guidelines and argue maturely and come to a resolution, you're modeling how they can resolve conflicts in the future. You're teaching them firsthand that they will have arguments and that they don't destroy the marriage and they don't have to, you know, attack each other and things. That and they learn conflict resolution. The only thing we learned in psychiatry, again, the only thing that you don't argue about in front of kids is the kids. Like if one of you wants to be lenient and one of you wants to be strict, the kid, you know, one of the kids comes and says, you know, I need this, I need that, I want to be able to stay out till 1 o'clock this morning, and you know they're 16 years old going on a date for the third time with some guy or something. And one of you, you know, says, not unless I accompany you. And the other one says, yeah, I trust you and I trust him. It's okay. I know it's a special occasion. And
yeah, that's horrible.
You know,
that causes
yeah,
so much pain and anguish and jealousy. You're fostering jealousy. You're creating division. That is not good.
Yeah. Yeah. And the kid, the child will learn to go to whichever parent is most lenient. And then the other parent will get mad at that parent and get mad at the teenager and all that. So when somebody asks something, and in fact, kids will pit parent against each other even. So if there's something that one does to get in trouble and one parent wants to ground them for a month and the other one wants them to, you know, write 100 times that they're sorry or something, then it's important to go off by yourselves and say, okay, your dad and I will go discuss how to handle this and we'll get back with you. And then talk about it privately. And usually if you know, split it 50-50, it doesn't matter if you're a little bit too strict or a little bit too lenient with your kids. It's important that you come out agreeing and that they do suffer some consequences and have some boundaries. It's not to get vengeance on them. It's just to teach them discipline. But when it comes to the kids, don't argue in front of them about them. But you can argue about anything else, almost anything else, in front of them. So that was a good point. It's not on my list, but it should be. That's a really, really good one, Kristen.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 5, we've already covered 14, but but number 5 on my list is to remember teamwork. Both mates are on the same team.
Yeah.
In a lot of marriages, because of pride, we compete with each other. When there's a disagreement, they both are like two debaters and a debate team. They want to see who can win, and they'll argue with each other to try to win. And instead, imagine that your marriage is you're on a basketball team, and you and your mate are the two guards on the same basketball team. You're dribbling down the court and you know, passing off the ball to each other and to the other players and stuff. And what if your team was dribbling down the court, you and your mate were the guards and dribbling down the court, and you stole it from each other? You stole the ball from each other because you wanted to be the one that handled it, you know, or the other one was getting too many shots, and so you blocked. When your mate shoots to try to get a score for the team, you block the shot because they're getting more than you are. See what I mean? That's how immature a lot of couples are. And
I have a stepbrother that would argue with his wife all the time. That we're constantly one-upping each other with everything. Yeah. And I was like, you know, if you two put that energy into, you know, being a united front, it would be amazing. But, you know, again, those are back to what we talked about with normal. If you're coming to the table and so is your spouse with your family history. And so if you had the kind of parenting that Paul was just talking about, you know, there was a lot of division, there was a lot of splitting between you and your siblings, you're going to take that into your love relationship as an adult, because that's what it's there for. It's there for you to work on your stuff, to become a better person. We're supposed to evolve. So don't think for a second, oh, I would never do that with my mate. Baloney. Yes, you will.
Yeah. And so remember, you're on the same team. What you just shared reminded me too of a couple that I know who've been, they love each other, and they've been married for, I think, like 35 years or something like that. And but everything if he says the grass is green, she'll say no, it's dark green. If he says the sky is blue, she'll say yeah, but there's clouds in it. And whatever he says, she has to correct it and make it a little bit wrong. And so as much as I could, I'd keep my mouth shut. But there'd be times when I get so mad that I'd say, listen, I'd say right in front of him, do you really have to? It doesn't really matter if he says there were 14 people on the opposing team and there were really only 13. It doesn't really matter, and it's really it offends me. It bothers me when you do that. And I knew her well enough so that she took it and accepted it and worked on it. If it would have been a stranger, I would have got rejected, I'm sure.
And
Anyway.
Exactly. I think about too, sometimes when we have people come to the house to, do all the honeydews that we don't have time for. And depending on kind of that person, I've noticed that we can start kind of talking to each other. My mate and I, we'll kind of talk to each other, not quite as nice because we're a little uncomfortable because there's someone in our home and it's a new dynamic. And I see that a lot with couples too, how you are around other people with your mate, and be very aware of keeping that united front when you're in front of other people.
Yeah, you're on the same team. So when there's a conflict, if you resolve it, then your team wins. If one of you wins and the other one loses, then that's not good. When you resolve a conflict, it doesn't mean one of you is not right and one's not wrong. But when you resolve it peacefully and agree to disagree, even then you both win. And what you just shared, Kristen, reminds me of another thing too, that in a lot of cultures, like in Europe, when you get married, you move in with your parents, and you've traveled to Greece, Kristen, just a year or two ago, right? And I've been there, and
just at the end of last year, yeah.
And it, did you notice that it seems like half the houses are being worked on? They have these scaffolds up and stuff, and that's because they keep adding rooms. Whenever another kid gets married, they move in. I don't know if it's always the gal that has the husband move in or the husband that has the gal move in, but they keep adding rooms as they have more kids and grandkids and stuff. And that's why in Italy and Spain they had so many elderly people during the coronavirus pandemic because they were all together in the same big houses or something. I don't know, that might be part of it, but I don't encourage. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. Maybe it's the right thing to do, but I really don't encourage any of my clients to have a parent or anyone move in their house with them. They'll feel sorry for somebody that's destitute and have them move in with them. And it always ends up not working out good. And if you help somebody for a week or so while they're looking for somewhere else to stay, that would be an exception. But I really strongly encourage any married couple not to have anybody other than themselves and their kids. And their kids need to move out too when they get old enough, living in their homes. So that's just my personal prejudice. So
agreed.
But what you shared reminded me of that.
Yeah, with COVID, that's hard. But under other
maybe not like that. Yeah, during the pandemic, you might make an exception. You might have to do that. Stay together with a few other people.
Exactly.
Okay. And then 6, pretty much we've covered that conflict resolution is the goal of mature arguments, not who wins.
Right.
When you resolve a conflict, you both win. So we've already said that. Number 7 is you never attack each other. So if you have a disagreement about something, you resolve that. You don't attack each other. You don't call each other names. well, you sociopath, you narcissist, you blah 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 blah. You're being unfair because of blah blah blah. You selfish so and so. And a mature couple will discuss their differences of opinion or their perceived offenses while listening to each other's opinions and either agree on a compromise and apologize for the offense, or agree to disagree if they don't really agree on it, but all without attacking each other or calling each other names.
Agreed. I can't add anything to that. That's perfectly said.
Okay. Okay. Number 8 is to make a commitment to each other. A lot of people, when they get married, they'll even make jokes about, well, yeah, this is my first wife, or my first husband. Yeah, I got married to my first husband. Well, are you divorced? No, I'm still married to him. But when you get married, assume it's a lifelong choice. It doesn't mean that there's not. There are reasons for divorce, even in the Bible, and in spite of what some religions might say, apart from the Bible, but the Bible does give a couple of reasons that where divorce is an option. God made it an option, but you make a commitment to each other for a lifelong choice, and you choose to love each other. You won't always feel the emotion of love, but you choose to love each other, even if you're not feeling that way. The feelings of love can vary day to day. Two people usually will marry each other because they fell in love,
Right.
and when you love somebody, you even hate to be away from them. You can't wait to be with them again, and you enjoy being with them, and they make you feel really good on the inside, and you make them feel really good on the inside, and it's totally normal when you're living with your mate for a long time for those feelings to go up and down. And we learned in psychiatry that when you lose that first love, if you the feelings follow the actions. Feelings can follow the actions. So if you lose the emotion of love, if you remember the things that you did when you were in love, and then start doing them again, not phony, but do the nice things that you did when you were in love. Maybe bring home some flowers or whatever, and then usually the feelings will follow. And it's interesting that even though this is what modern psychiatry teaches, the Bible taught that a couple thousand years ago when John wrote the book of Revelation in chapter 2. God complimented. There was a church that was doing a lot of things right. The church at Ephesus, which is in Greece, I believe, and it's a beautiful, beautiful town. I remember going there, and it's just a gorgeous town. But there was a church there, and God complimented the church in Ephesus. And He said, "Boy, you're doing this good, and you're doing that good." He says, "But I got one thing against you that you need to work on, is that you've lost your first love. Your love for God, for me, and your love for each other, and is not as strong as it used to be." And so He said, "Here's 3 steps." He said, "Remember, repent, and do the first works." So the same thing that we learned in psychiatry. He said, remember the things that you were doing when you were having a lot more love for me and for each other, and then repent of the fact that you're not doing them now. And repent, it just means change your mind. Doesn't mean you go beat your head against the wall or anything, but change your mind,
Right.
and do the first works. And if you do that, the feelings will follow. You'll revolve the emotions of love. So that's a good principle 2,000 years ago. It's a good principle today.
Exactly. Agreed.
Okay, number 9. To remember, a mate can start by remembering the romantic. And this, I'll go quick on these. These are just a reminder of those 3 that I just mentioned. Remembering means a mate can start remembering the romantic and loving feelings that were present early in the marriage. Remember the loving things that were done. And as human beings, we often take things and each other for granted and forget the importance of maintaining those love feelings and behaviors. And repent means to recognize that the decision the couple made to love each other deeply at some time in their relationship had now declined. It's not. Don't be embarrassed about it. It's normal, and it'd be wise and profitable for each member of that couple to make a redecision. So you decided to love each other, and you did love each other, and now the love is waning. And so rather than say, oh, so the marriage, we fell out of love. I have so many people say, we fell out of love. And I say, well, so what? They think they ought to get divorced just because they fell out of love. If they go by these steps and get some therapy, some marital therapy, the love can be stronger in the end than it ever was before. So you make a redecision is what we call it in psychiatric terms. You make a redecision to go back to the first decision, or sometimes a redecision is changing it a little, but to rebuild the depth of love. And then do the first works means that whether or not you feel that degree of love, you choose to do the loving things daily that were done early in the marriage. And if we do that, if we behave lovingly toward God, or if we behave lovingly toward our mate, or behave lovingly toward ourselves, then the feeling can be revived. Okay, then number 12, not counting all the ones that Kristen thought of that I should add in here, that should have added in here that if I would have remembered, is no shoulds or shouldn'ts. And I think we've discussed this one in the past, but in a marriage, you never use the word should or shouldn't with your mate. Now with a kid, with your children, you can say, you shouldn't do that, and you're going to get disciplined if you do, or you should do your chores, before noon today, because that's what you agreed to do. And it's okay to use that with your children, or if you're a teacher at school, you teach shoulds and shouldn'ts. But with your mate already had one parent. Anytime you're using should or shouldn't with your mate, you're being that mate's parent. And your mate doesn't want to be married to another father. Your mate doesn't want to be married to another mother. And a lot of times, a couple will enjoy sex with each other until one starts using a lot of shoulds and shouldn'ts, and then all of a sudden, the mate getting should on and shouldn't on loses their ability to enjoy sex and doesn't even want it, or can't perform, or things like that. And unconscious, and they don't even know why, but unconsciously, it's often because they feel like they're married to their mother and they don't want to have sex with their mother. And so don't use should or shouldn't in marital discussions. Okay, number 13, instead of should and shouldn't, use I feel messages. Those are really effective. They work. Another reason not to use should or shouldn't isn't just because it's offensive, but because it doesn't work. If you say you should or shouldn't do something, the mate's automatically going to be defensive and say, don't tell me what I should or shouldn't do, or yes, I should because blah, blah, blah. But if you tell your mate when they do something that you don't like, or don't do something that you wish that they promised to do or something, instead of say you should or you shouldn't, you say, I feel sad. Tell what emotion you're experiencing. I feel angry. I feel sad. I feel discarded, disrespected. Here's how I feel when you do that, or here's how I feel when you don't do what you said you're going to do. And you're not saying you got to change. You're not saying you're wrong, and you're not saying I expect perfection. You're just saying how you feel. They can't argue and say, no, you don't. Because you're not really arguing with them. You're just saying, here's how I feel when you do that. And it's really very effective most of the time, because a couple if they're nice people, they want their mate to be happy, and they want their mate to feel love and warmth and safety. And so when a loving mate finds out how the other mate feels about something, lots of times they didn't realize that what they were saying or doing or forgetting to do created that negative emotion in the mate. And so it works. It may not work every time, but it's going to work a lot more than should or shouldn't will.
Absolutely. And, even it just changes the tone, because you'll, in anger, you'll say something and maybe throw a should in there. But if you agree to say, I feel, like we talk about in number 13, this goes right into that gets rid of those shoulds, because it makes you think before you say what's coming, what's going to come out of your mouth.
Yeah. And I mentioned in here, I feel messages don't always work, but they work about 4 times more often than you should messages work.
Exactly.
And plus, they're more respectful. We're encouraged in the Bible to speak the truth in love, and it's a good rule whether you believe in the Bible or not. Speak the truth in love. So some people don't share with their mate anything about how they feel. They stuff it. That's wrong. And some people share it in a negative way. That's derogatory, and that's wrong. But speak the truth in a loving way, in a respectful way, and telling them how you feel is a good, respectful way to do that. Number 14, we're moving along. We're doing okay here.
We are. We're moving.
Yeah, because really we've done that in less than half an hour, right? So, or is it an hour and a half? Have I lost track of the time?
An hour and a half. We have 15 minutes left of this show. We got to get through the rest.
Yeah. Okay. Expressing appropriate anger. Number 14, expressing appropriate anger to each other when you're offended is a sign of maturity in a marriage. Kristen, you mentioned earlier that about that couple that bragged that they had, we've never argued with each other. And, if a couple tells me that, I say, then one of you is not necessary, because one of you is doing all the thinking for both of you or something, because arguments are healthy. They're appropriate. Sharing anger with each other is appropriate and healthy. It shows that there's a marriage of equals, and they can grow and share their feelings and even get angry. And since you're living with imperfect people, and your mate for sure is living with an imperfect person, then of course you're going to get angry at each other.
Right.
There's going to be, it's just normal. And in fact, if you go by the Apostle Paul again, for you're a Christian, the Bible actually says some Christians think it's a sin to get angry. I don't know where they learned that. Maybe some religions teach that. I think they do. But the Bible says in Ephesians 4:26, and if you look at the original Greek, which is always more accurate than the English, words that are used, it's in the passive imperative tense, and God is saying, go ahead and get angry. And he's not saying it, you have permission to get angry. He's saying, go ahead and get angry. That's the right thing to do. If somebody lies to you or cheats or steals or offends you, go ahead and get angry without sinning. It says get angry without sinning. But don't let the sun go down on your wrath. So share your feelings of anger with your mate. Speak the truth in love, and turn vengeance over to God. Don't try to get even with your mate. Turn vengeance over to God, and but share it with your mate, and hope for resolution. So I feel angry toward you isn't telling them you should or you shouldn't do something. It's telling them how you feel about what they're doing again. Now, there is one caveat to that. King Solomon said 3,000 years ago that if you're angry at a fool, so if you're angry, if you happen to be married to a narcissist, a true narcissist, and you get angry at the narcissist, and if you share your anger with him or her, they just get real mad at you, and they don't learn from it. And it says, don't waste your time with them. You can interpret that any way you want to. I'll let you carry that to its conclusion. But if you're married to a mature person, then if you share your anger with a mature person, you'll love each other more. You'll appreciate each other more. I had a real neat experience this week that I just thought of. I train counselors here. I have some that I'm training for a couple of years that work in the day program. Then they go out then they work as full-time outpatient therapists without, after that training. This is after they get their master's degree that I train them. And one of them confronted me very lovingly about something that I said that was offensive. And he just said, I feel, I just want you to know, I feel offended by the way you worded this. And when I looked at it, he was absolutely right. And I said, you know what? That took a lot of guts for you to share your anger. Here I'm training you, and you shared your anger with the founder of the clinic. And I said, I'm really proud of you for doing that. I said, that's really cool. And he did it in a very, very tactful way. And I said, I really respect the heck out of you for that. And now that you've shared what I said, you're absolutely right. That wasn't a good way to say it. 50 years ago that would have been, but nowadays it wouldn't be. And I said, so you've helped me improve. And so I want to thank you for that too. And so if you express your anger to a mature person, they'll love you for it.
Right.
But if you express your anger to an immature person, then they'll hate you for it. So don't waste your time with them. So I'm not going to go on. Some people say that, well, I'm just not going to go on by saying that means you got to divorce the person or whatever. Because it may end up in that. Hopefully it'll end up with marital therapy, and somebody might improve, and sometimes people won't improve no matter what.
Exactly.
Any additional
Nope. Next.
comments on that? Okay. Number 15. Now, we're moving along here. Number 15. Limit the confrontations to the here and now, and never bring up the past. Don't ever bring up past issues. That's a hard one.
That is so hard, because sometimes you're bringing up something that keeps happening that they're not listening to, and it's relevant to the situation now. And then other times it's just a deflection from not dealing with their stuff. And I'll give an example here. And my partner, Michael, knows what I'm talking about. If I say to him, I feel something about what you just did or what you just said, oftentimes the knee-jerk reaction from him is to go, well, look at you, that's the pot calling the kettle black, that kind of thing. And I'll go, okay, we've been back and forth together and not for 33 years. So at that moment, I know how to handle it. I'll say, I'm not talking about what I've done. I have many flaws. I'm talking about this situation in the present. So sometimes it's the delivery, the timing of when you say how you're feeling. I mean, I know that I have to wait a bit before I say something, not in the heat of the situation, because his first reaction and what he learned from his parents was to immediately deflect and get defensive. And while I don't like that, I do know this about him. And so I will wait until later sometimes to say something, and it goes over much better that way.
Yeah. And it's easy, if somebody does something that maybe they have done, maybe it's a bad habit they've got that, or they've done it in the past. And like, I know one thing I do is my wife and I love to watch TV at night together, and we're both playing our video games and at the same time, because we're both ADD. So, and it's easy for us to find programs we both like because we like similar things, and neither of us controls what we watch. We watch things that we both enjoy. If there's things that the other one doesn't enjoy, like she doesn't like to watch sports, so I watch that in another room if there's a game on or something, or when she's not home, when she's out shopping or something, and she'll watch the few shows that she watches that I wouldn't enjoy when I'm at work. But we watch and enjoy each other. But I'll sit there not thinking, and I'll pop Coke cans, I'll pop them open quick, and they make a lot of noise.
So annoying.
Because I just forget. I forget that he exists at the moment. I'm in the middle of a game, and a golf game on my computer, and that's just one little thing. And so she'll remind me, please don't do that. But if she said something like, you always do that, you did that yesterday, you did that last week, you did that the month before, you keep saying you're not going to do it, you keep doing it, if that would not be a good way to argue, even though it would be true. But you limit it to the here and now, because I'm not intentionally doing it, but I do forget sometimes, and I'll go a long time and not do that. I'll go weeks without, and then I'll forget. So
and I don't recommend anyone do this, because I just did this the other day. I have a pet peeve about empty bottles of water or Diet Pepsi or whatever in my car. I just don't appreciate them being shoved in places in my car. instead of taking it in immediately and put in the trash. So what I'm saying is
Yeah.
don't do this, because I'm actually, Michael spends more time cleaning up after me in the house. So there's plenty of reasons he could say, well, look at you, you're a mess, and you're upset about this one thing. So what I did the other day, because it kept happening, is I took them all out of the car and I threw them at him. So
Yeah, no, that was real mature. That's rule number 15. Rule number 15 is if your mate leaves pop cans in your car, be sure to throw them at them, especially if there's still a little bit of drips left that'll get on his clothes. Then throw them at him, and that'll teach him.
Yeah,
That's rule number 16. I'm glad you shared that though, because we all do stupid stuff like that.
That's the thing. Like, no, of course, we all do those
We
things.
all do stuff like that. Yeah. If people really, if they could spend a week living in your house and a week living in my house, I think they'd be shocked at how many times we screw up. Even though we intend to do the right things and we're both good people, but we're human. We're human.
Exactly.
And
I think that's the most fun part of my consulting career, was that I was traveling so much. I would get invited to stay at my host's home many, many times. And while I did, sometimes I was like, I have to have a hotel because I just have to have my privacy. But other times, it was really nice to be there and to see this person, their whole person, and how they are at home, which is the most relaxed, you're supposedly going to be. It was nice to get that piece and to see, oh, this is how they treat their spouse. This is how they are with their kids. This gave me an idea. And it actually helped me in business. If I saw how they really treated people at home and it wasn't good, I made a business decision as to whether or not I wanted to move forward with them, because it'll come out when you get heated in those business discussions too.
yeah, like if one mate does something that makes the other one feel disrespected or degraded or betrayed or something like that, then it's real easy to bring up, this is how I felt 5 years ago when you did that, and 8 years ago when you did that, and last year when you did this, and that doesn't, it ends up not helping. It ends up, that just means that the past hasn't been forgiven. So even if somebody's repeating an offense, the past still needs to be forgiven, because anger is the leading cause of death. And if you hold grudges toward your mate, that's going to kill you. I mean, if we had time, I'd tell you, adrenal cortical trophic stimulating factor is released from the hypothalamus, and that causes the pituitary gland to put adrenal cortical trophic hormone, which goes to the adrenal glands and does this and blah, 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 blah. And that's true. What I'm telling you is true. If you stay angry, those chemical reactions happen, and the result is fewer antibodies, and you can come down with any kind of disease, whether it's cancer, infections, coronavirus, anything. If you're a person that holds grudges, then you're more likely to come down with all kinds of diseases. And plus, anger is the leading cause of depression, because another thing that happens is if you hang on to grudges, serotonin gets depleted out of the brain, and as it's leaving the brain into the bloodstream, it attaches to serotonin receptors in the blood vessels and causes headaches, including severe headaches. Some people get a lot of headaches because they have buried anger, and they may be really nice people that just are afraid to be aware of anger, but most headaches are caused by repressed anger. And then you go to the emergency room and they give you a shot of Imitrex or something like that, and all it does is block the serotonin receptors in the blood vessels so that the anger gets covered up.
Yep.
And if you resolve anger issues, you're less likely to have headaches. Now, not all headaches. Don't go judge anybody, because some people get them for genetic reasons and other reasons and things like that. But anger is the leading cause of depression. It's the leading cause of death. If you hold grudges toward your mate, it's like swallowing rat poison and saying, "Take that." It's a stupid way to get vengeance. So be sure that you limit. If you don't limit the conflicts to the here and now, that proves that you're still holding grudges about past offenses.
Right.
And so you need to forgive each offense as it occurs, and even if you agree to disagree, you forgive. And if the person deserves consequences for some horrible thing, let God worry about that. He says, I'll repay. I'll get vengeance. Don't you do it. If you do it, then I won't. But if you don't, then I'll do it in a fair way. I'll convict and see if there's genuine repentance and stuff. And if there's not, they'll suffer consequences. So trust me. Let God worry about that. Don't play God by getting vengeance. I think that'd be a good place to
Absolutely.
to end our.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put a marker here. So we covered, and I'm not going to add any more of these. We'll add. You and I'll add. So you added some really, really, really excellent ones yourself as we went along here. That if we ever write a book together on this, let's be sure to put those in too. Transcribe this program that we just, podcast that we just recorded, because it's got a lot of good information that's a lot deeper than if you here's rules for marital communications, and 1, 2, 3, and they're simple, as though without looking at the depth of stuff that so much we're not aware of, and so much we do because our parents taught us to do that, and there's just a lot more depth to it than just making some simple rules. So we covered 15 out of the 24, so we'll cover some more next time.
Yeah, we'll do the rest of them next time. Listeners, thank you so much for tuning in, and stay tuned for the next one we'll do next month with Dr. Paul Meier. Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen. I appreciate your wisdom and your insights. I always have, and you've been doing these podcasts for years with some really, really experts in different fields, and it's always fun to do these with you because you teach me so much.
Same here, ditto. And listeners, thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Tune in next time for another engaging discussion on relevant mental health topics. If you have any questions about Meier Clinics, please visit our website at meierclinics.com. That's MEIER clinics.com, or call us at 888-7-CLINIC. Don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or any of your favorite podcast apps. And please note that we are a member of and produced by Mental Health News Radio Network, MHNRnetwork.com.